What's up everybody, welcome back. So let's continue working on our AI today. We're gonna add a few small things like getting XP when we kill an enemy, and we're gonna make sure that we actually use the damage from our data table. And we're gonna fix a slightly bigger issue where one of these AIs could just walk past us if he's targeting another player. So we made sure the AI divides its attention between players, but he could just walk past me and not notice me at all if he's targeting another player, and that's just a bit weird. So we're going to tackle that issue today as well. Before we dive into the video, I would like to mention that you can now join the channel and become a member. You get a membership badge and you get access to the premium channels in the Discord as well as some premium downloads. And if you do not want to become a member, you can still join the Discord for free and just talk about some game dev stuff or show a project that you made or just ask a question about a video. So that's all I got for you guys today. Let's dive into the video. Guys will get some XP for it. So we're going to open our XP component, and right in here we have the event called component add XP, and previously we used this with a trigger that we placed in the level just to test if it was working, and that trigger just exists in every instance of the game. So this event kind of behaves like a multicast event, but because we're going to use it with the AI right now, this will be called from the server. So we need to make sure that we turn this into a multicast event. So we're going to set it to replicate as a multicast. But then we also need to make sure that we filter out all the instances that don't have a player controller, because we're mostly doing player controller stuff in here. And the other guys don't need to know about our XP anyway. So what we're going to do is we're going to disconnect this and add a branch over here. And then we're going to check if we are the server. So get an isServer. And we're also going to check if we are locally controlled. So we're going to get an or boolean. And then we could drag in our pawn, for example, and just drag off here and check if we are locally controlled. And plug that in here as well. And then connect this back up. So now this should work if the server calls this. And we have this part fixed up. So now let's take a look what we need to change inside of our player character. So let's make sure that if we kill one of these guys, we'll get some XP for it. And we need to make a few small changes to our setup. So let's go into our framework interface folder and let's go into the damage interface. And we're going to add one more boolean to the return node in here. So add one more output, and I'm going to call it isValidHit. And then we can close this one down and open up our AI blueprint. So the minion base one. And in here, in the take damage event from the interface itself, we need to make a few changes, because right now, if we are not alive, we're still calling the return node and we can't actually check if the enemy was already dead before we hit him. So we need to make sure that's working. So we're gonna grab this execution over here and plug it directly into the health setter. And then we're gonna grab the branch and we're gonna move it to the beginning of the function. So disconnect it and move it all the way to the beginning. So the first thing we're going to do is check if we are alive or not, and then we're going to set a local variable. So local isValidHit. And then we can simply plug that in over here and make sure that we set this one to true. And keep continuing, and then this one needs to be false, and that goes directly into our return node. So that's all the way back here, and then we can hook up our local variable over here, and that should work. So now we can go into our player character and do the final setup, and that's actually pretty simple. So open up your base character, and in here we have the server process hit function, and we're gonna add a little bit after this take damage node, so make a little bit of room. And we can add a first branch in here to check if it's a valid hit or not. So we can simply plug in the condition over here. And then we're gonna add another branch and we're gonna check if we had a kill or not. And if we did, we're gonna add some XP. And because we're already on our player character, we don't really need to use the interface. So we're gonna grab the XP component and we can directly call the component add XP function from here. So if this is true, plug it in over here and we're going to grab the XP from the interface, and if it's false, we're simply going to return, and that's good to go. So now we're already in this function, so we can also make sure that we actually use the damage from our data table. So if we drag off here and promote this to a variable, so that's going to be our damage variable, and we need to make sure that we set it to replicate over here. And then if we go into the server set replicated weapon variables function, then we can simply grab it from the data table because we already added it in a previous episode. So all we need to do is hook it up over here and plug it in, and that should work as well. So right now if we kill one of these guys, we should get some XP for it. So let's have a quick look. So on the bottom right, oh, my HUD is not working because I'm solo, so let me launch a multiplayer quickly. There we go, so I have 750 XP. And I gained 50 XP by killing one of these guys and another 50. So that seems to be working. Okay, cool. So that's working. Let's move on to the next part. So we're going to add a perception component to our AI controller. So we already created an AI controller, so let's open it up. There's nothing in here, so we need to open the blueprint editor, and then we can add a new component and look for AI perception and simply select it. So now we can configure it over here on the right side. So we can set up the senses that we're going to use. We're going to click the plus sign over here to add one array element, and then we can pick the sense we want to use in the drop down menu over here. So we're going to set up our sight sense, and once you've selected it, you can expand it further and set some default settings. So for the sight radius, I'm going to bump it down a little bit, so I'm going to make it 1500, and then for the loose sight radius, I'm going to make it 2000. So that's a little bit easier in the small map that we have. Then we have the peripheral vision half angle degrees, so that's basically the sight cone of the enemy. So right now it's set at 90 and it's a half angle, so that's 180 degrees. So I'm going to lower it a little bit and make it 150. Then we need to make sure that we set up the detection by affiliation, and we need to enable all three of these or you're going to run into issues. So this is not exposed in blueprints properly, so this is the only thing you can do right here. Then we have the auto success range. We're not going to use that right now, so we're going to skip it. And then there's two new options that weren't available in Unreal Engine 4 that will allow you to make the sight cone a little bit more realistic. We can have a look at these a little bit later. So the rest of this should be good to go, and we can simply compile and save it. And that should already give perception to our AI. We could make our life a little bit easier if we go to our project settings, and then on the left side we have a tab called Gameplay Debugger. And over here the activation key is set to apostrophe, and that doesn't always work as it should. So you might want to change this to something that actually works. So I'm going to set it to my numpad. And then we can have a look at our sight sense. So what I did, I made sure that my AI stopped moving. So I disconnected the move to player loop. And I already removed most of the AI from the map, so there's only one left in there. So that's a little bit easier to test stuff. So I'm not just gonna hit the solo game button. So we have our perception. So let's hit the gameplay debugger, and now you will see some information pop up on the screen. So on the top left, you can see different categories that you can enable and disable. So we're gonna enable the perception, which is number 5 on your numpad, and then you can see the sight sense being drawn on the screen. So we have the loose sight radius over here with the pink circle square. Okay, and then we have the green one, which is the sight radius, and over here you can also see the vision cone from the enemy, so that's the peripheral vision half angle degrees. And right now he should be able to see me, but he's not, and I know why that is. And we're also going to make sure that that also happens in your screen. So right now, if you guys walk into here, you will see some circle pop up around your character, and that means the AI can see you. And if you walk backwards, he's going to lose sight at the pink circle. So we're going to make sure that the AI doesn't automatically notice all actors in the game, because right now if there's a lot of enemies around him and there's other players and actors, he will notice everything that's around him, and that's going to cause a lot of data that we don't need. So we're going to make sure that we set it up the way I have over here, that he will only notice us if we register him as a stimuli. So how are we going to do that? Let's close this down. So here we have the HUD errors. That's nothing to worry about. We need to fix the solo game anyway. So we need to make sure that we edit our DefaultGame.ini file. So we can simply close down the editor because we need to restart it anyway. And then we need to navigate to our DefaultGame.ini. So let me get the Explorer over here and navigate to the folder where your project is located. And in there, go to the config folder, and there you can open up DefaultGame.ini. And then let me grab my notepad in here. There we go. So this should be pretty much the file, and in here we're going to paste 2 lines, and those should be these 2 lines. So let me zoom in a little bit. So AutoRegisterAllPawnsAsSources is false. And I'll make sure to paste this in the description of the video as well, so you can copy and paste it. So make sure this is in your DefaultGame.ini and then save it and simply restart the editor. So I'm gonna fire it back up, and once it's running I'll get back to you guys. Okay, so we're back. So if you guys would launch it right now, you will get the same result as I had. So if you enable the gameplay debugger and enable your perception, your pawn would not register. So we're going to make sure we fix that. Get rid of this. So go to the character folders and open your base character. And for the character we also need to add a component. So again, look for perception. And this time you want to add the perception stimuli source. So this will make sure the player can be seen again. So make sure you select it over here, and then on the right side again you need to define for what senses you want to be a source. So let's add one array element over here, and we're going to enable the side sense, and then also make sure that we auto register as source and enable that. So this will make sure that as soon as we spawn in, this will register and then will be noticed again. So if we go back into game right now, we should be spotted again by our AI. So let's open up our debugger and walk into the side radius, and there we have our green sphere again. So this is working as it should. So right now we can finally start setting it up. So first of all, let's open up our AI base character, and in here we're going to make a few small changes. So let's start with the move to player loop. Although we're not using it right now, we're going to make sure this is working as it should. So we're going to disconnect this over here, and then we're going to drag off the movement result, and we're going to look for a switch. So we're going to switch on the path following result, and we need to make sure that we hook it up to the on success and to the on fail and not to the top one. And then we want to connect all of these except for the aborted one. So we're going to plug all of these back into our delay except for aborted. And the reason for this is if our AI will encounter another player, so he needs to switch his targets, he will abort this current movement order. And therefore we do not want it to continue then, because we will get interference with the new orders. So we need to make sure that we abort a movement, it will actually be aborted and not continue the loop. So that's what we did over here. Then we're going to apply a tiny fix to our die event. So over here we have die, and then we have the stop movement immediately, and we're going to disconnect this because I found out it works a little bit better if we move it over to the start ragdoll event. And then we need to make sure that only the server will call this. So we're going to add a little branch in here and check if we are the server, and then we're going to call our stop movement immediately from here. So that's just a little side note since we're in here already, and hook this up to the true pin, and that should be good. And now we need to take a look at our find enemy function, because we're going to change the way that this works as well. So first let's open this one up, and we need to disconnect a small part in here. So we're going to not set our number of AI attackers right in here. So let's disconnect this increment and make sure that we connect this back to our false loop, yes to a false bin. And then we can get rid of this. So this should be good to go right now. And then we're going to create a new function that will actually set the target. So let's call that set target player. And let me grab my notes in here. So we're going to grab one input, and that's a base character. So add one input, and that's our hero base. So let's call it our target player. And then hero base character. And in here, the first thing we're going to do is check if we are a valid target player. So let's just drag it in here and grab an isValid node. Oh, not that one. So this one. And if we are valid, we're going to grab our number of AI attackers. So get number AI attackers. And we're going to decrement this. So drag off here and decrement int. So this is if we call this function and we already have a target player set. So we did not change the target player yet. So this is the old target player, and we're going to decrement the number of AI attackers on our previous target. And then we're going to simply drag in our target player from the variables and hook this up over here, and also hook it up to the not valid bin. So if we didn't have an old target, we do not need to do anything about that. And then we can simply set this target player to the new target player provided by the input. And then we need to make sure that for the new target player we increment the number of AI attackers. So get number AI attackers. And this time we're going to increment it and hook it back up. And then that should be good. What we can do is get our AI controller. And from here we also set our target player on the AI controller, but I don't think we have that variable created yet. No, we don't. So let's open up our AI controller quickly, so we have this done and out of the way. So in here we're going to add one variable as well, and that's our target player. And that's a hero base player. So now we can compile and save it and go back to the minion base. And if we drag off our AI controller now, we can set our target player from here. And hook this back up. And for the target player, we need to plug in our target player that's stored on the character. So that should work. And then this function is done, so we can return. And we need to make sure that if we go to our event graph, that we call the function over here. So let me take a quick look. We can simply get rid of this because we're doing that in the function. And then we're going to call our new set target player. Plug this in like so, and grab the target player from the new enemy output over here. So with that set up, we can simply call this function from our player controller as well to change our target, and that way it doesn't mess with each other. So compile and save it, and now we can set up our AI controller to actually use our perception. So let's open up our AI controller, and in the event graph, let's start off with an event on possess. So look for possess and grab event on possess, and that will return our possessed pawn. So we can cast this to our base AI. So cast to minion base. Really, there we go. And promote this as a variable, so we have access to that. So let's promote it. And that's good to go. And then we're going to set up our perception component. So if we select it on the left side over here, we're going to grab an event, and that's called on target perception updated. So you want to grab the second one over here. And this event, we can use it. So it will return the stimulus. That's the structure that's returned by all of the senses. And it will also return the actor that it perceived. So the first thing that we're going to do is drag off the stimulus, and we're going to check if this is the correct sense class. So right now we're only using sight sense, but we want to make sure that everything matches. So we're going to grab the sense class for stimuli. And if we have this, we can drag off here and simply compare it. So we're going to do equal to. And in the drop down menu, you can search for sight. And then you want to select the AI sense sight. So not the config, but simply AI sense sight, and select this one. And we're going to hook this up to a branch. So if anything that we perceived in here was perceived with our sight sense, we're going to continue. Then we're going to check if the target that we perceived is our target player. It should be, because that's the only one that has the stimuli source component, but we're going to make sure anyway. So let's drag off the actor here. And we're going to say is not equal. And if he is not equal to my target player, then we're not going to do anything. So let's hook it into the branch. And then we can make sure that we continue by casting this guy. So let's drag off here, and we're going to cast to our hero base character. And if this is true, we need to continue. So then we're going to cast, and in that case, we also need to break our stimuli perception. So let's drag off the stimuli, and we're going to break our stimuli. And this will give us some information about the sense. And the main thing that we're interested in right now is the successfully sensed boolean. So if I walk into the sight radius, this is true. And if I leave the sight radius, this is false. So I would need to make sure that that I'm perceived. So this needs to be true. So let's drag a boolean in here and hook it up. And we're only gonna do something if we are perceived. And what are we going to do? Well, we're gonna simply drag off our possessed pawn, and then we can set the new target. So we have our minion base over here, that's the possessed pawn, and we can set the target player with the new function that we just created. Hook this up to the true pin, and the target player is going to be the result from the cast. And then all we need to do is call the new, or not new, but the move to player loop again. So this will abort the old movement order and make sure that I start moving towards my new target. So this should actually work already, and right now it should make the AI switch targets if I'm inside of his sight radius. So let me set up everything in the map. So I'm going to add a few enemies again and make sure they start moving, and then I'll get back to you guys to test this. So let's have a little look if this is working. Let's launch a multiplayer game and let's host and search. So we have about 5 or 6 enemies in the map right now, and they should divide their attention between the players. And if I start walking in front of them, they should switch targets. So they should perceive me. So here they go. And let's see what happens if I start collecting them. And they actually follow me. So that's working. We have our perception set up, and we can dynamically switch our targets. So if I would walk by this guy and make sure that I'm far away, they would start attacking him. So yeah, that's our basic AI perception setup. We're going to expand on this later, but we have something to work with. So thanks for watching, everybody. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please consider leaving a like, and make sure that you join the Game Dev Raw Discord if you want to ask some questions or just show something about your own game. Thanks for watching. Talk to you later, guys. Bye bye.